Welcome to lesson 3. In this lesson, we're going to go through a little bit more about direction setting and making sure your team following you in the direction that you're going. I want to make sure that you're taking notes along the way and watch one of these videos every day. It's not going to be too much in one go. It's also not going to be too little that you don't actually implement it. You should be implementing things as you go. So after you watch a video, go and spend an hour actually putting something into practice. You won't get everything done by the end of the course, but at least if you're consistently making effort towards the goal, you're eventually going to achieve it. Today, we're going to focus a little bit more on goals. Now, ideally, your team should know not only the overarching vision, but also their individual goals or their team goals, what they need to do for a week, a month, a day, etc. Now, there are different types of goals that move you towards what you want to achieve, and goals that keep you away from what you don't want to achieve. For example, a goal that moves you towards what you want to achieve might be more sales calls. If you're achieving, 200 call attempts a day, you're probably going to get through to about 50, and then you're probably going to have a conversation with about 5 of them, and you might close 1. Now, an opposite of that is a goal that keeps you away from something that you don't want. So it might be perform a certain level of maintenance so that the car doesn't break down, or go through a checklist of items that reduces the risk of something going wrong. That being said, and delving a little further into negative goals, negative goal is not only something you want to stay away from, but it's something that is not going to help you sustain business over the long term. For example, you don't want to dip into negatives on your cash flow and your forecasting, so you might want to avoid having an overdraft. Or perhaps your goal is to have weekends off as the business owner instead of working 7 days a week. So the negative goal is don't work 80 or 100 hours a week. Now, even if you are working those long hours, or even if you're not, sometimes it can just creep up on you. Sometimes that over a period of time, it just becomes more natural that you work more and more hours. It's kind of like a frog in a pot. They ran an experiment. They put a frog in perhaps not boiling water, but hot water, and it recoiled away and it felt the pain at a certain temperature. But then they ran another experiment where they got another pot, started with cold water, put the frog in it, and then gradually turned the heat up over a period of time. And the frog was actually able to stay and withstand a much longer period of time in that hotter water before it decided, I don't like that. The same thing happens in business where you are spending time working every day. You might put in a lot of hours or a couple of days because you had to get that project over, or you're trying to reach that next milestone, or whatever it is. But then over a period of time, that becomes the new normal. And so you just get used to that extra time. And so a 40-hour week becomes a 50-hour, 60-hour, 70, 80, 90, 100-hour week. So you need to set clear boundaries about not only your business's goals, but your own personal goals, and identify ways to avoid them spilling over into that negative territory. And everyone's familiar with a positive goal. For example, make more sales, get to $1 million revenue, whatever the goal is that you actually want to get to. Maybe you want to close 3 enterprise deals by the end of the year. Maybe you want to be able to put another vehicle on the road if you have a mobile sort of business. Then you've got achievable goals and stretch goals. So an achievable goal might be, I'm going to go to the gym today. It's pretty easy to get in the car, go for a drive, and turn up there. A stretch goal might be, I'm going to go consistently for 3 months. Now, things might happen, but even if you made that goal, then you attempted it, and then you got to the gym maybe 2 out of 3 months, or maybe 2.5 out of 3 months, that's still pretty good. That's better than not going at all, and it's much better than going just once. So a stretch goal, whilst that goal is attend the gym, that is not as well defined as perhaps getting 6-pack abs by a particular date. However, it's more of an achievable goal than getting 6-pack abs because other things might weigh into that. For example, the food that you eat, etc. And in business, the same thing applies. So perhaps you want to say, I'm going to make $1 million in sales. But if you're starting out at $100,000 in sales and you're getting to $1 million, that is a 10x jump. That's not as though it's not doable. But if you set that goal, then you're probably going to make some bigger moves to get to that point and make it happen. If you're taking small incremental changes in order to get to that point, it's not going to happen, or it's not going to happen within the time frame that you set. So there's also the concept of 10x being easier than 2x. You can make much bigger jumps much easier and faster by taking slightly bigger risks, by thinking outside the square, than if you were just to make incremental growth goals. Perhaps you could have a maintenance goal. For example, We talked earlier about those negative goals, the things that are going to avoid you going into the negatives, working super late, maybe taking on certain clients. Maybe the goal is delivered by setting expectations with clients to say that, yes, we're going to take on a project, but you need to know that we probably can't start for 2 weeks and it's going to take about that long and it's going to cost you this much. As opposed to what most people do is to say, yes, Mr. Customer, we can get that done right away. And then the customer goes, I want it even faster. And so you end up breaking yourself, which might make that one customer happy, but it destroys you as the business owner. And it might also mean that you pay less attention to other projects and other priorities in your business, such as looking after staff. Another maintenance goal, which requires a little bit of ongoing discipline, can be a certain amount of cash in the bank account as your cash flow. So it might be that you need that discipline to say, I need to save money, keep cash over here, which is a goal and a goal that you can achieve. But maybe the achievable goal might be 10% of revenue in the bank account, and the stretch goal might be 30% of revenue in the bank account. So even if you only make it to 20, or if you only make it to 15, then it's going to be much better than your bare basic goal. And you're going to have much more room for flexibility. You're going to have much more room to pounce on opportunities. For example, when stock becomes available, perhaps there's another business around you that's not going so well, you might be able to acquire them at a low cost and then increase your reach and customer base. As we mentioned in an earlier video, your business needs to have a goal. Now, the vision statement is often in business plans a neat little one-liner, but this is not good enough. You need to write a much bigger and more detailed vision of where you want to be in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever your goal horizon is. I strongly encourage you to involve your team in this process so that they can also be brought along with the vision. That does mean that you can still influence it as the business owner to where you want it to go, but by involving the team, you make it more likely that it's going to become a reality. Ideally, you would create the 90% solution. You've written most of it. We have a 5-page document that really goes into details of who we are, how much money we're making, who our customers are, not necessarily by name, but by scale. And then we've got types of people that we have in the organization, whether we've got a COO, a CFO, and then we've got all of these other business unit level goals that talk about, well, this division does this and that division does that, and we've achieved this as a whole. Once I wrote that document, I then circulated amongst the team and encouraged everybody to write comments in, to add to the document. And then we all met together and we talked about line by line, what do you think? What do you think? And by doing that, the team were really invested in where the business was going to go. And that is much better than having that one little liner that is on your business plan that goes, our company vision is. That's a nice little way to represent it to the outside world if you want to rattle it off in a very quick sentence. And it might be something you put on your website. But that real core vision document is what your team should live and breathe. By doing that, not only do you get buy-in, you also create a common goal. This becomes the vision that they potentially have for the business as well. And by doing that, they're going to make every decision, every action, every day in line with the ultimate vision. Now, the team are motivated to do the goal because they actually want to get somewhere themselves in their business, in their career, in their life. They want to be a part of something that made something big happen. Now, in that as well, you can bring them along for the journey and ideally reward them in some way, shape, or form. But potentially you might have a employee share option plan, or perhaps you got to take the team on a holiday or something like that. Now, if you're setting a 10-year goal, it's not always likely that you're going to have all of those staff members by the end. So you kind of have to have those successive goals throughout the process to perhaps every year when we achieve this goal, we're going to do X. And by doing X, now you exponentially motivate the team to take the next step on. And remembering, if you ever want the company to run without you, you need to have all of this written down. It needs to be in a prime position for everybody to be able to find. Even make it part of your onboarding. So every new team member comes in, they get to see the vision, what the company's trying to achieve. I have an online course, and in that course, we've got who are our customers, what are we trying to achieve, what's the end state. And as the new employees come through, if they've got any questions, they're already in the frame of mind of, wow, everybody's going to achieve this big thing. How can I help? Once we understand the ultimate vision of where you want the company to go, now we can, if that's a 10-year plan, we can look at 5-year goals to get to the 10-year goal. So we obviously need to be about halfway there. And at the 2.5-year goal, we're just breaking it down, or you could break it into yearly goals at that point. You need to achieve this much revenue in this year, that much revenue in that year, And of course, you've got to allow for some variability and fluctuations and plan for some things not to go to plan. That's where stretch goals come in to say that this is our goal, but if we happen to go well past it, then we know that we're on track to achieve our 10-year goal. So we break that down to 1-year goals, 6-month goals, then quarterly goals, monthly goals, weekly, daily, etc. A daily goal could be, I'm going to make 10 phone calls today for the sales team, for example. The admin team might be, I'm going to follow up on 3 accounts receivables today. And over a period of time, things just run normally. And so your growth goals combined with your maintenance goals will help you achieve your 10-year goal. So your growth goals are make more sales, get more revenue, make more profit margin per product or per service or per customer interaction. And your maintenance goals are minimize refunds, minimize bad debts, minimize risks. And by those powers combined, you're much more likely to get to the end goal. You're not going to have some problem fall apart halfway through the year, which then takes you back to square one. If you're doing your maintenance goals, you're not going to achieve your major target if you're not doing your growth goals. And if you are doing your growth goals and you're making 10 calls, then perhaps you could do 15 calls. That's your stretch goal. That's going to get you to that next level. But if you're going to have a financial goal, you need to understand your numbers. You need to know your break-even point. You need to know how much you need to make in sales today. And if you don't make the target, how are you going to make it up from yesterday to tomorrow or to the next day? Because those numbers keep compounding. And if you have a short run for a period of time, now you need to rethink the plan, make some short-term adjustments, maybe cut some costs, put on a sale, make some kind of move to get the next thing and the next thing. So if you don't get your daily goals done, then obviously those goals flow into the next day. So you need to make a list and write it down. And the Eisenhower matrix, which is urgent and important, urgent and unimportant, not urgent but important, and not urgent but not important. And that allows you to categorize your tasks. For example, the urgent and not important tasks are all the notifications on your phone, which you can turn off. The urgent and important might be something's burning down and you absolutely have to solve it right now. The not urgent but important, those are the things that are going to be those milestone moments that move you towards your goal. So maybe that might be designing a product or designing a website or something like that. Needs to happen, but if it's not happening, it's not moving you forward. And there's not necessarily a deadline on it, but the sooner you get it done, the better. And of course, if you do make time for those things, your business will progress forward. And then the unurgent and unimportant things can often help. So for example, in your personal life, that might be going away on a golf day or something like that. But in your business life, it might be going to lunch with the team. Doing that sort of thing is not technically important for the business operation, but it is important for team morale and bonding, etc. And remember that goals that you set need to be SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, results-based, and timely. So the specific goal, for example, is a specific metric that can be measured. So it is make 10 sales calls. Is it measurable? Well, yes, because you either make the calls or you didn't make the calls. Is it achievable? 10 calls? Yeah, it's achievable. If it was 2,000 calls, well, no, that's not really achievable for an individual. There are power dialing tools and you can make call attempts, but it's those successfully connected calls that count in this scenario. And in order to count a call connection as successful, perhaps when someone answers the phone, they don't just simply hang up straight away, or you actually get into a conversation. So that's where being measurable means that we need to get specific to say, or be specific and measurable to say what a call consists of. Is it, I made a call attempt, I dialed a number and got an invalid number tone? No, that's not a viable call. What you need to do is make a definition of what the call is, make a definition of how many calls need to be made, and then make a definition of what a successful call looks like, even if it's an unsuccessful call. And the result is, no, sorry, I'm not interested. At least you got far enough down the call to say, this is what we're offering. Would you like to buy it? And results orientated with a time frame. So we talked a little bit more about the detail of the call result to say, did we get a successful call where we were able to get out half of our call script, or we were able to get past introductions to say, hi, I'm Jimbo and you are, etc. And then the time frame is a day. So that could be the workday. Could potentially, there's some other metrics around that to say that the ideal call times is between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m. So that call volume has to be completed within that time. Of course, if a conversation runs over, or maybe if you started calls a bit earlier or you started calls a bit later, that is still within the time frame of the day. So it's 20 calls per day. And then you might also say that that needs to be done within the optimal time zone, and other work needs to be completed as well, such as reporting and following up with past clients. Then that result is still the goal for the day. And that result is still specific, measurable, achievable, results-based, and timely. Now with quarterly and annual goals, now we need to start to measure them out in a way where we can check progressively, because if I set it today, there's no sense me checking tomorrow or the next day. I need to give the person time to actually contemplate it, absorb it, thread it in with everything else. But if I wait until the end of the 3 months, then perhaps that was a waste. I've wasted now 3 months waiting for that person to do that quarterly goal. So that's where you can thread it into perhaps your weekly stand-ups, where you can just ask a question to say, hey, how are you going on this thing? Have you started? And you don't need the full back brief, but it could be, yep, I've just done the basic framework. I'm going to do this other bit next week. Good. That's all you know. You've got a pulse on the way the company is operating. The next thing you could do is, if you are running monthly management meetings, you can ask the management team, how is this project going along? And then they should have that information. So you're putting the expectation onto your management team that they are also following up on their team to do the right thing. This is how that trickle-down leadership occurs. And remembering that all of these goals are compounding, that if you're going to be making 20 calls per day, then that should lead to 10 successful calls per week. Then that should lead to 3 closed sales per fortnight, or whatever your numbers are. They're going to be specific to you. But one thing leads to another. You know the conversion from the other day. Leads times conversion rate equals customers. So if we're making more calls to get more leads, then we're doing a better job at converting. And we know that if we close 10% of the time, in order to get 10 customers, that we need to call 100 people. So it's now not necessarily about finding the right customer. It's just about achieving the numbers, and then everything else will work themselves out. Obviously, you don't want to do numbers for numbers' sake. You want to do numbers that are good numbers, find a good quality lead, but that just comes into the specific goal. We're not just going to call anybody in the specific goal. We're going to call businesses that meet X criteria. All of your goals for all of your team members should work together in harmony. So that means you need to stop, take a step back, and look at the entire business. And if you've got a really well-performing marketing team, but a very poor-performing sales team, you're really out of whack in your sequencing. And we talked earlier about running a business being like a cake. If you've got too much of one ingredient, it's not going to work. It's almost a little bit science-based in the sense that you need to have the right volume of leads to then have the right conversion rate percentage, to then have the right operational delivery team to support what was sold. And then you need to be able to have the right number of and skill of finance team to be able to manage all of the bills coming in and out in order to handle all of the work and administration that was just done throughout the rest of the team. So if you're weak in any one area, it's going to show. The cracks will start to appear. That's not a problem. You just need to be aware of it. And then you need to set goals that support. So you might ask the marketing team to collect a little bit more information to make it easier for the sales team. You then might make the sales team collect a little bit more information to make it easier for the finance team. And by their powers combined, everything works together. Now, as your company grows, you start to lose visibility, and you start to not have your finger on the pulse of every interaction in your company. So you need to start to build indicators, because otherwise, if you ask this person to do something and then you wait a week or 2 weeks or the 3 months, like we mentioned earlier, then that thing's not going to happen. So you need to have some form of monitoring and reporting to make sure all of the steps in the chain are at the right rates so that one thing doesn't outpace another. And in order to do that, you should be checking in with your team on a regular basis. And because your team, ideally, if it's growing, now you need to rely on other people's information that they're providing you. So you can do that by involving your team in the goal setting process. Say, what do you think is achievable? Because if you set some ridiculous number, and you, the business owner, might be a legend at it because you did it forever and that is your key skill. But the moment you hand that task off to somebody else, you have to be a little bit okay with the 80% solution, because they're never going to work in your business the same way that you do. But if you're aware of what those metrics are and you work with it in an appropriate way, you're still going to have a successful company, provided that you can monitor, maintain, and make sure there's no reporting gap in when they do the task as to when they tell you they do the task. Now, the next thing you need to do is make your goals visible. Sometimes when people do these planning events and they try to figure out what the goals are for the company, they've communicated with the team, they've figured out all the metrics, it's all gone into a nicely presented document, and then it gets saved into a folder and nobody looks at it again. So in order to make it visible, there are a number of ways that you can do this. One, you have it on the onboarding course, so every new team member sees it immediately as soon as they come into the organization. Maybe you bring it up at team meetings to say, how are we tracking against the goal? And that's something that can be regularly looked at. Then potentially you can create a cut down version that goes on people's desktops, or a poster that goes on the wall, something that people can see. Perhaps you put it into a piece of content like a video, for example, and then put it onto the homepage of the intranet page, or put it onto a file system or something that people access on a regular day, like an intranet or a task system. Continually promote the idea of the goals and the process and all of the tasks that need to come together in order to achieve those goals. And one way to do that is through internal media. So you're either going to write an article, make announcements, celebrate the wins towards the goal. You're probably going to leave voice notes, constantly bring it up in conversation, and perhaps make little videos like this again so that you can distribute that communication on a regular basis through the team. The idea is to inspire and motivate. Now, one way to avoid demotivation is not setting ridiculous goals, things that people can't achieve. I have seen businesses where they make these obscene sales targets for the sales team, and they absolutely have zero chance of ever achieving it. And so the sales team just turn up and do the bare bones minimum. They don't care because they're so frustrated that they can never achieve this goal because that goal is tied to a financial bonus. So if the goal is not realistic and that stretch goal is a little bit too stretch, you might need to rein it in and make it a little bit more achievable. So one thing I like to do when getting goals from team members, you're going to ask them, what do they think needs to happen and what's their input to how to make it happen? One easy way to do this is to create a Excel sheet and just give everybody a line and then just say, everybody write down a line and put tabs on the bottom. So a different sheet for different phases to say, what's a daily goal that you can achieve? What's a weekly? What's a monthly? What's a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year goal? And then they can go to each page, talk about it with them, get them to understand it. I'll put a template alongside this video in the course, but by putting everybody's name in there, you're giving them a space where they are required to go and put in a goal. They can put in 1, they can put in 10. It doesn't matter. The point is, they will start to see everybody else's goals. They will start to see what aligns, what doesn't align. Sometimes you'll get new ideas. People will be able to give you a goal that maybe you didn't realize was important to somebody, like they want to set up a new office in a particular area. That may not be necessarily achievable. Maybe there's some things that they don't understand about the business and the way it runs, but it's still nice to understand what the team are thinking and feeling to be able to give you an indication of getting real feedback. You're not just doing this exercise for no reason. You do need to get reflective feedback from your team and incorporate it into your plan. It's not just your plan, I'll ask everybody, but I'm going to ignore them. That's totally the wrong way to do it, and you're going to put people offside. You're much more likely to get these people to achieve the goal with you if they're invested and they feel like their contributions matter. So thank you for watching lesson 3. Make sure you are taking notes along the way and start implementing this stuff right away. Go in and start writing down your goals, write your vision document, your big 5-page. This is where we are in the future, looking backwards. Start watching one of these videos a day and start implementing something immediately. Over time, over the period of the course, you will start to see benefits in your business, no doubt. So thank you for watching and look out for the next one.